Hey up everybody, and welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at Milano Torino, the last race before Milano San Remo at the weekend. Before then, we have Milano Torino. This is a category 3 race, which means that you get 300 points for winning the race. You might see some breakaway points, because when you take a look at the stage profile, this race is pretty much pan flat apart from two pretty major climbs towards the end. You got the Sapega climb twice, 4.2 kilometers at 9.2%. Pretty tough climb. This last one crests with 20 kilometers to go, so therefore a group being away here would snag you breakaway points, and the same would count for when they hit the bottom with 10 kilometers to go. So if a group gets away, which is less than 30 riders, you'll be getting extra points there. So obviously it's very important to think about that. However, most people who will be competing in this, who will be in a front group here, will also be competing for the final victory. So it's not really too much of a thing to specifically consider in this regard. But the climb, 4.8 kilometers at 9.2%. It's one for the pure climbers, really. And that's really going to weigh in on who we're going to be selecting. This start list has taken forever to come out, so here we go. Hershey, honestly, with the recent addition of Michael Storer and Marco Brenner into the Tudor Pro Cycling start list, I would not be going with Hershey. I don't think he's had the greatest form so far this year. I would have hoped for a bit more from him in Tirreno Adriatico. So Hershey I'm not feeling too keen about, especially since Storer was so good during Paris-Nice that I think they should be really going with him. Adam Yates, another recent addition. I think that he is a good choice. I want to say that he's won this race in the past, but I think it was when he was with the Ineos Grenadiers. Yes, he did very well in the Tour of Oman. Tirreno Adriatico, he didn't really do too much, as expected. I think Ayuso is always going to be the kind of favoured son there. So Yates is a bit of a weird one. I think they've also got Del Toro in this race, so I think it'll be both of them going for the victory here. Del Toro, I would say, arguably looked better in Tirreno Adriatico. So if you were to pick one of the two, I'd probably be going with him. But Yates, this is a race which really suits his characteristics. So I think that he's a hard one to count out, and just because he had a bad Tirreno doesn't mean that much. It was just, a pretty cold, miserable race. I don't think that was really to his liking, and I think he was working for other people, so I still think he's a good choice. Bettiol, no. Race, just this finale just doesn't suit Bettiol. Woods is an interesting one. He has had a fairly quiet start to the year, let's say. He was somewhere between 15th, 20th in both the Phone Dome and the Phone Ardèche Classic, so he's definitely got some form, and this is a race which again really suits his characteristics. He's performed very well here in the past, so I think that Woods is a good choice. It's just a matter of whether you really trust him with the kind of not bad, but just kind of mediocre, nothing too special results which have been going on so far. Abrahamson, probably not. Ulissi, possibly. I'd say that Astana would have some better options in cheaper riders, actually, than Ulissi. He hasn't had the greatest start to the year as well. He DNF'd Tour of Oman. He hasn't really done that many races since then. So, even like Laguelia, which was very suited to him, he wasn't very good. So I'm not feeling too certain about Ulissi. Carapaz, very similarly. He wasn't that great in Tirreno. He wasn't very good in Stadi, even though they bigged him up quite a lot. So I'm not sure about Carapaz either. Del Toro, I think, is a really good choice. I think that he's should be one of the first people to consider for this race, considering that he worked for Ayuso during Tirreno and he still finished inside the top 10 in GC, I think. So Del Toro is really a very safe choice for you to be putting on. Formolo, I think he could be a co-leader with Aina Rubio for Movistar in this race. I wouldn't say that this race particularly suits Formolo, especially with his recent form, but I would say that he's still a good candidate for a top 15. Tobias Harley-Johansson was surprisingly good in Tirreno on that stage 6, kind of a only real mountain top finish, you could say, where Ayuso won. Tobias Harley-Johansson was inside the top 10 in that stage, which was beyond my expectations for him, that's for sure. So I think that he is a good choice. If that race or that specific stage is anything to go by, he is looking in pretty decent form at the moment. So I would say he's also a good one to consider. The 14 credit riders, there's only 2 of them this time round. Riley Sheehan and Kevin Vermarker. I'd say if you're going to pick one of them, it would be Vermarker, obviously. I'm a big fan of him, and Picnic Postonel say that he is going to be their sort of protected rider, or one of like 3 protected riders in this race for them. And I really like his characteristics for this race. He's a good climber on his day. Think back to like San Sebastian last year, where he was 4th place after some really, really tough and steep climbs there. But the form just hasn't been screaming at me for Kevin Vermarker so far this year, so I'm not feeling too confident about putting him onto my team. I certainly think that there are some other options who are cheaper, who could be better. Clark and Covey, probably not. The 10 credit riders, George Bennett could be an interesting one. It'll be him or Mike Woods. Bennett would certainly be a differential. I don't think a lot of people would be picking him. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, then go for Bennett. Rubio is also quite good, although he did finish about the same positions as Carapaz did during Tirreno Adriatico, so maybe that's not the greatest of signs, but he's still somebody who should be going for a top 20 in this race. But realistically, Michael Storer is the best 10 credit rider that you should be going with, because he was very good in Paris-Nice. He won from the breakaway. He's clearly pretty good in the bad weather. I haven't looked at the weather, but if it is bad, then that's obviously not a problem. I'd say pretty easily Storer is the best of these, followed by Rubio and George Bennett. The 8 credit riders, Brenner is a good choice. Yeah, he was 10th on the Green Mountain in Tour of Oman, which has got a similar sort of style of length and steepness to this one that we have here, the Supega. So I think that Brenner's a cool choice. Fortunato, I think, is another popular pick. He was looking good in Tirreno. You know, he was up there in the top 10 of that mountaintop finish. And I think that Astana are really needing these UCI points. I think that Fortunato is going to be a big player in that, especially for this race. It's a pure climber's climb, and Fortunato is exactly that. So he's a cool one. I think that you should be thinking about putting Fortunato on, just because Astana really need these UCI points. Hausen is also one to consider. Although he wasn't very good in his most recent race, I think it was Tirreno Adriatico, he might have just been working for Pidcock, more than likely. But in the Tour of Oman, when he was pretty much he was riding for himself, he was very good in that race. You know, he was like just top 10 on those 2 pretty tough finishes in the Tour of Oman. So I think that Hausen is one which people might not want to go with just because of his Tirreno Adriatico form, but that might have just been because he was a domestique. So just bear that in mind. Tejada I really like as well for this race. He was super strong in Paris-Nice against some really tough competition. So I think that him and Fortunato, Astana have been getting multiple people inside the top 10 in a lot of these .pro races, and I could see them doing it again with Tejada and Fortunato. That's just my 2 cents on it. Badilati, if it's not going to be Hausen, it would be him. He was, again, quite good in the Tour of Oman, so definitely one to consider there. Giovanni Carboni, what was he, top 10, 6 or something, 5th or 6th in Trofeo La Guelia. Obviously that was a different style of race, but Carboni clearly in good form. You can't really write that sort of stuff off sometimes. Steph Kras, yeah, he's been in decent form this year. You know, he was up there in GC for Volta Comunitat Valenciana. He's a very good climber. He should be fighting for a top 15. David de la Cruz also was, I think he was up there in GC in Tirreno Adriatico. I can't exactly remember where he finished, but I definitely remember him being a pretty good choice, actually. One of the better 6 credit riders in that race, funnily enough. So, David de la Cruz, Badalati, Damien Hausen, who knows who it will be, but it could be one of them. Fanchelu via Lula Tour, he was good there. Whether he's managed to carry that through to here, I'm not too sure. Fora Prost, sorry if I've pronounced that wrong, Fora Pro, possibly. He's an out-and-out climber, but he hasn't shown the form this year. But maybe if you're feeling a little bit spicy, you could go with him. Odne Holter, kind of similarly. Johannes Coolset, I get confused with the Coolsets. One of them is a climber, one of them isn't. Maybe that's the one to be going with. This is really bad of me, but I don't know that exactly. I think it's Johannes Coolset who's the climber of the two, I want to say, but they do have Tobias Haaland Johannesson in here as well. Yeah, it is Johannes Coolset. He was third in the Alula Tour, so he could be a cool one, but I think that realistically they'll be going with Tobias Haaland Johannesson. And Jürgen Nordhagen, another interesting one, but his form this year hasn't been very good. He didn't start in the Middle East, and then in Strade Bianche he wasn't that great either. Jose Felix Parra, another good climber, probably one of the protected leaders for Equipo Kern Pharma. Ivan Sosa, speaking of guys who have done well, this guy's done well in this race in the past. It's the climber's climb. Sosa is exactly that guy. In Volta Comunitat Valenciana, all of the however many weeks ago, he was 6th place on the tough mountaintop finish, which Boy Trago won. So I wouldn't go writing off Ivan Sosa too quickly. He's a very interesting differential if you're wanting one. If you got 5 safe riders and you want a risky one, maybe Sosa could be good. Tullet, I think, should be the protected leader for Visma Lease Bike, considering that Jürgen Nordhagen, I don't think, is in that great form at the moment. And the 4 credit riders, not that you necessarily need them. I haven't actually looked this far down, so this is the first time I'm looking at it. Gualdi, what was he, top 10 in stage 2 of the Tour de Alpes Maritime. That was more of a punchy stage, but certainly a name to think about. Bjorn Kort, he is apparently one of the protected leaders for Picnic Postenel alongside Kevin Vermarker, I think. So certainly an interesting one, but he's from around Leeds as well, so got to give him a bit of a shout out. You could just go for assist points on UAE riders, possibly, if you wanted that sort of thing. If that's your style, you just want assist points, then by all means. You could go for breakaway riders. Mark Stewart usually gets him a breakaway quite a lot, so that's certainly one that you could think about if you're just going for the breakaway points. But other than that, the Falls don't have that much to offer. This is my team at the moment. Yates, Woods, Fortunato, Del Toro, Storer and Tejada. I quite like it. I think my only concern really is Mike Woods, just because of his recent form. I'm not overly sure whether he's actually in better form than, say, Tobias Haaland Johannesson, who I might go with instead. But given that it is just it's a very steep and long, it's just a steep climb, and that Woods just absolutely loves those sorts of climbs, so I might go with either Tobias Haaland Johannesson or Woods. I'm not overly... I could go with Brenner. Actually, he'd be another one that I would consider. But other than that, I don't think I'd really be going with many other people. You'll obviously notice that the team cost is at 80 now. I don't think this is a race where the winning team will cost 100 credits, so don't treat that as some sort of benchmark to hit this time round. Just go with riders who you think are going to do well. Especially since you got such good value in the mid-range this time round. But let me know what you're thinking in the comment sections down below. Who are you thinking of putting onto your teams? And yeah, all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut.